5.
So I just have to ask this question after the last version of the guy Hollingsworth. Are we this classy? Because I don't think I'm this classy.
I don't think that it's
classy.
class. He's definitely English, you know?
Oh, is that but that might be synonymous.
A lot of time. Well, I think a lot of times being English can be mistaken for being classy.
But Guy is both. To be fair, he's what they call a gentleman, which means in the old days, he would have, had a barony or a duchy or a dukedom, and he would have.
You were talking about the book, and the whole thing. What was the book you talked about?
Drawing Room Deceptions. And
no, the etiquette book.
The etiquette
book.
Right. Debrett's Guide to Form.
Yes.
So you know where your spoons go and how to wear your waistcoat. And
I've always wondered about a lot of that stuff.
Whether you dress right or left, stuff like that, which is not a political thing, oddly enough. So you've got different Hollingworth material picked out today, or is it more of the same?
So today it's a little bit different. So the stuff we were looking at before, it was that stroll through England late at night with Guy, and it was the black and white footage. It was very stylized, right? This is more routines that are shot on location in front of real people. So we'll get more of a flavor of what it's like to see Guy in person.
So this is like Guy walking around on the street in London?
No, actually the first clip we're going to start with is actually him at like a cocktail party where he's inside of a home and he's doing close-up magic for a few people standing around in a living room, right?
Super exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
Why not? Because it does happen. Coincidentally, I have a pack of cards with me. And I'm going to ask for a few cards to be chosen from the pack, if possible. I'd ask you just to reach in and take one out. And why don't you have one for me as well? Why don't we all play?
Sweet.
If you wouldn't mind. Lovely. 3 cards. Have a look at the cards. Do remember what they are, and bear in mind that this trick is much more impressive if you still remembered what they are by the time we get to the end. Thought I'd mention that. And you should put them back for me. So, Christian, if you'd like to just pop yours back somewhere near the top there, and one that might get a little further down. And let's try. Let's put this one right down at the bottom to make sure that they're all widely separated.
You can tell he's classy because of the way he offers the selection opportunity. You can't just in America, any old place, go, say stop, place it there. It's a classy crowd, you gotta, right?
Yeah. So I think we're gonna have to listen closely. This seems like it's, the audio's a little low on the clip in general, I think, isn't it?
They're going to travel across the room and land underneath the card box, which I have not gone near, and yet which is on the mantelpiece over here. Hard to believe, I know, but Christian, I shall start with your card. With any luck, if I just snap my fingers over the card case, if I reach inside, have a look, that should be the very card. No? You serious? Do you see it? Okay, fair enough. Hold your hand out for me. Let's see if we can rectify this somewhat embarrassing error. Concentrate on your card for me, and I will see if I can get it right this time. Have a look. Is that it? Yeah, that was better. Sorry, my mistake entirely. Let's see if we can do it properly this time, okay? Back underneath the card box. I'll do my best this time. A snap of the fingers. And amazingly enough, for the second time now, underneath the card box. What was your card, Alex?
Jack of Hearts.
The Jack of Hearts, that's more like it. Perfect. Leaving just one more card. You'll notice I forgot to put the box back, leaving a slight problem, but not necessarily. We shall try something even more impressive for the last one, because inside the card box, actually inside, one card and one card only. Now, given I got the first two right, what was your card?
6 of clubs.
The 6 of clubs, and with any luck, there it is. 6 of clubs.
Very good.
Thank you.
Great.
I think that's very clever.
It's a good construction.
A top change on the card box. Is that a new idea, or is that an old idea?
I've never seen it before. Who can say what's original in Magic anymore? I'm sure someone somewhere tried that idea somehow, but that's the first time I've seen it in print and on a in a Magic release. But what a great construction for 3 cards selected. I love it.
Yeah, he is a smart, Guy is a smart guy. Like, talk about somebody who is able to read the Tamariz's work and to easily understand how it translates. Talk about somebody like who doesn't need 20 years to understand concepts in Magic. He there's something about Guy where he got it really early on. And you can look at that routine and see that he knows how to construct a routine in such a way that all the moments are covered perfectly. You know, even the way he was holding that card box, like I immediately thought, I wonder if he's holding it a little strange, but he wasn't. It was in a regular grip. I mean, it just looked like he was holding a card box. So just little details like that. I mean, I think, you know, I just really like the way Guy thinks. I really appreciate the way he thinks, you know. And I've seen him live and hung out with him a few times too. I mean, he never fails to impress everywhere he goes.
It's interesting that that particular trick is a little bit in a different category than some of the stuff we watched last time, which I think we would call sort of Guy's signature sleight of hand type material, like the waving the aces. I forget if that's even the name of it, but the visual twisting the aces where the cards turn face up. And that's like, you know, some guys are, you know, renowned sort of concepts that are with the breaking news in there. And this, like Alex was saying, is an example of just like really solid structural misdirection. And, you know, there's plenty of stuff going on. The audience is always looking to a new, interesting piece of information. Very interesting. I heard someone say, some political strategist said the other day, that the most valuable piece of information in a political campaign is new information. And it was occurring to me that that's kind of how it is when you're doing some kind of promotional campaign. And it's also how it is in magic. Whenever you got new information, you hoard up all the new information that's going to be revealed during the course of whatever it is, a trick or a campaign or a thing, and then you dole it out as though it's we call it silver bullets, right? You know, I line up those silver bullets, like each one has got to kill as many werewolves as possible, right? Because if you only have one, you need to delay, and there's 8 werewolves, you need to go right through all of them, you know? And so every time he goes, where do you think it went? Like, that's the newest information. That's the first time the card case comes out, everyone's gonna be like, that's a good time to quickly change your pants. I mean, you can do whatever you want. So I think that trick is just such a wonderful example of, there's some sleight of hand in it, but you're not under pressure to do any of it.
And he's changing the rules on each phase, right? So it's not like there's a straight line to this is what the effect's going to be. He's sort of giving them enough information so that they can play along, and then he can change the rules and do some different effects so that they're like, wait a second, I'm going to watch closer on the next one. And it builds. And I just, like I said, just great construction.
I think a really smart observation too, because how many of you guys, like watching this guy in chat, how many of you think about your magic in that way? Like, how do you, when you approach a routine, do you think about that? Like, what's new? What is the new information I'm presenting? And is that the time that I can use to cover something or to use as misdirection? We talk about this a lot in the 3M course. And in fact, you know, I think that's why like our members and people that follow Conjure community always gravitate towards 3M, is because what they find is that they get into magic, right? They buy lots of tricks and they're understanding little bits and pieces of tricks they buy and they learn. But it's like the way to put it all together is what's missing. And when you learn that fundamental, I mean, there's some rules. And when you learn those fundamental rules about magic, which have to do with misdirection, construction, routining, when you learn those fundamental rules, you can take anything and turn it into really beautiful, beautifully constructed magic. And we focused a lot on 3M on that. What, Steve?
I was going to say what I really liked about it is how he got ahead on that second card, right? So, I mean, it's just it's total construction. And what it's really doing, the guy's going to see a miracle in his hand, but it's setting up the impossible miracle of the other card under the box, right? So it's like, it's just perfect. It's just so well put together. And I could imagine doing it. You know what I mean? Like, it's very doable and it seems very workable, which I like.
Yeah, I kind of want to do all the guys' magic.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, Steve, like I feel like what you're almost saying is like when you see something like waving the aces, right around the same time that you say, wow, that's amazing. Like piggybacked with that exact thought at the same moment is, well, that's a whole thing. That's a whole thing that's going to have to be like tended to. And, you know,
I just kind of look at things from a perspective of, is it a worker? Like, is it something you would want to go out and work? Because I'm sure Guy can go work that, right? Like, I'm
does.
sure.
that's not what you mean when you say it's a worker. You mean,
Do I want
can
it?
anyone who's got the standard skills of a magician do this pretty easy without flowing his attention into this new material completely away from an audience, right?
Yeah.
So, you know,
I mean, I'm sure he can do it.
right. But just to be clear, that's not what you mean by a worker. You mean, can anyone with standard chops get it done, really, right? Is it commercial?
I think for the most part, yeah. I mean, I just look at things, you know, from a directness, you know, stuff like that. And I think that the twisting the aces, I forgot what we're calling. We called it a bunch of different things. I wish I knew what the name of it was.
Waving the aces is what. Guy
Waving
referred
the
to it as.
aces.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a pretty doable trick too, now that I think about it. But it's still,
Yeah, I've seen him do
very
it.
into it.
I've seen him
You have
do it
to
on
get
stage
into
at conventions and stuff. Totally.
Yeah.
It's doable. But you have to earn it, right? You have to learn all those sleights and all the
Exactly.
moves. Yeah.
Exactly.
My favorite thing, Aaron, that I've seen Guy do at a convention is that sort of the double reality situation, you know, that he does.
Alex may show us a clip with that. I don't want to, you know, it's one of those things that'll never be the same.
We'll get
again.
there. We'll get there. It'll be in the it's coming up.
Okay. All right. So moving on. So the next beautiful thing about Guy is that he's also not afraid to like take on all the different genres of card magic, as you'll see in this next beautiful clip here. Here we go.
Sort of game where it would be useful to find a few good cards in the pack. For instance, an ace might be considered a good card. So by a process of estimation, by just looking through the pack, I need to get some idea of where there are some aces. So that with any luck, I should then be able to cut more or less directly to one of the aces. Let's see how we can do that. Just trying to estimate the position of one of the aces, the ace of hearts. Quite a good way, obviously, to start off in a game. I should mention as I'm doing this that, of course, there are no breaks or marks around the side of the pack. It's merely a question of estimation. So if I were to cut a little bit higher up this time, just about here, we'd find another one of the aces, the ace of spades. Quite an advantage, as I say. Bear in mind, of course, every time I do this, there are fewer aces in the pack for me to cut to. So at least statistically, even if not dramatically, it does build to a certain extent. There's a third one. The fourth one, I have to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure where it is. I have a reasonable idea, but can't guarantee it. So let's see. I think it's a little bit higher up. I'm going to say it's probably about here. And with any luck, that should be the six of spades, a well-known wild card in any game, as I'm sure, maybe not. The six of spades, in fact, an indicator card, indicating this number 6, meaning that if from that very point I were to deal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the sixth card will be the last one of the aces. So that, I suppose, is the next best thing to do. So thank you very much. There are a few. So those are a few sort of basic ways of finding a few cards that might be of benefit. But having found them, of course, you have to arrange them so that they fall to you in a game. And there are a number of ways of doing this, ranging from the crude to the somewhat more sophisticated. So to start off at the bottom of the ladder would be a method of full shuffling, sometimes known as stacking of cards. So particularly in an overhand shuffle, something that one should always be careful of. If someone is shuffling the cards, it's quite possible for them actually to be counting the number of cards as they're shuffling. As you can see here, I'm actually counting the cards as they go past. Now, of course, in a real game, I wouldn't be looking at the cards with that amount of attention. I'd be sort of talking and looking around the room, not apparently paying much attention to what I'm doing, but in fact running up certain numbers of cards, running a few blocks of cards in particular orders, so that if I were to deal out, shall we say, 5 hands of cards, what should happen is that the card that falls to me, this one over here, would actually be one of the aces by means of that full shuffle. So again, if I were to deal another hand out, we'd find another one of the aces falls to me here. Once again, by dealing the third lot, that's number 3, and the last one, dealing very, very honestly, I think you'll notice here, that will then be all 4 of the aces, which is, as you can tell, is a slight advantage. Oh, thank you very much, thank you. Oh, I'm very pleased to hear it. However, it is nonetheless quite
Let's stop there for 1 second. I was going to say, so this is a gambling routine, starting with finding the 4 aces, and then was he milking? Was it a true milk build there?
True enough. I mean, there's a lot going on here. So
Yeah.
I assume
You should watch the entire thing.
Yeah,
It'll
I have
all
a
come
feeling-
clear. It'll come clear by the end what's really happening with all of it.
Okay, all right. Then I'll press on.
I will say this, and this won't spoil the trick. His hands are so big. A deck of 52 cards looks like it's about 30. He's got a whole deck. It's not like a spoiler. It's not related to anything. It's not going to mess it up. You bring back the video because I have a feeling he's just really getting started. This feels like a tip of the iceberg situation. But look how small that deck
quite a
looks in that
crude way of
giant
cheating.
hand.
The reason being that, of course, that shuffling can, provoke a certain amount of suspicion. So let's imagine that these aces are back in different parts of the pack. If I just riffle them in there and give them 1 or 2 cuts, then supposing that somebody else were to cut the cards, could I trouble you just to reach across and cut the pack about in the middle for me? Wouldn't matter where you cut the cards. The reason it wouldn't matter is, of course, by now I do have the aces. I should have mentioned that earlier. Sorry, that was me cheating a little bit. But nonetheless, wherever you do cut the pack, at that point, I could now surreptitiously add those aces onto the bottom of the pack, you see. And then in a casual game, hopefully no one would comment on this. You sometimes do see people playing in such a way that only half of the cards are being used. And now as I deal the cards out, the card that I'm dealing to myself is actually coming from the bottom. So if you watch the ace of diamonds here, I'll do it quite slowly, dealing apparently very slowly at fingertips. But nonetheless, it's still possible to deal that ace of diamonds, and in fact, all of the cards off the bottom, so that once again, all 4 aces fall to me, which again is a slight advantage in certain games of cards. So that's a sort of a bottom deal. But nonetheless, in the fast company, of course, the fact that the cut is not completed would never be acceptable. And for that reason, people came up with the idea of, rather than dealing from the bottom, when the cards are cut and the cards that were on the bottom end up in the middle, surely it would be a good idea to deal them directly from the middle. So that now combines a number of techniques. If a card is in the middle, you would have to estimate its position and then try and deal it directly from that position. Now, to make it a little bit more interesting, I thought if I were to put another ace in another position and another one in here, so that in fact these cards are in different positions in the middle of the pack here, you can see that there's not a fixed number of cards between them or anything. They are randomly spaced out in the middle of the pack. They're not next to specific cards or anything like that. But nonetheless, with any luck, I should still be able to estimate the positions of those cards sufficiently well that I can deal directly from those positions. Now, this is a question, as I say, not only of getting the dealing right, but also of trying to get the estimation as good as possible. So I can't guarantee, but I'll see how well the estimation went. Not bad, but in fact, rather well, if I say so myself. That would be dealing from different parts in the centre of the pack, giving you, again, that slight edge over the opposition. I think you would have to agree. So that's a little sort of potted history of some of the main ways of cheating in a game of cards. Let me just show you one more, because this is a more contemporary version. Again, doing the same sort of thing of putting the aces back into different parts in the pack. And again, pushing them in square, making it very difficult to know where they are. I'm going to give them a shuffle, but much more about the sort of shuffle that people do use rather than one of those dodgy stacking type of shuffles. And of course the cards would have to be cut. When the cards are cut and then dealt, the idea is to keep everything as fair as possible. So do stop me if you see anything that looks suspicious, apart from the fact that I happen to have an ace in my hand. But nonetheless, I think you would agree, everything done in the fairest possible way, dealing the cards very slowly, having shuffled the cards very slowly, having put the cards back into genuinely different parts of the pack. And yet, nonetheless, we still seem to find that by some strange coincidence, I do have all 4 aces in my hand. Again, just that slight edge. But I know that by now you're thinking, presumably if one kept getting 4 aces in one's hand, people might think this was a little suspicious. People might stop betting quite as heavily. So for that reason, it's important to keep an eye on 1 or 2 other cards in the pack at the same time, so that as I'm shuffling the cards, I can actually see a few of the cards as they go by. And by these means of false shuffling, combined with the estimation that I've been talking about, it actually then becomes possible to put the cards into some sort of order, whereby I can then find a specific card if I wanted it. So again, if I give them just one more shuffle now, I think we should find that's probably just about done it. And that shuffle should mean that if I were to cut at exactly 26 cards, that on top of the pack there would now be a card that would go quite nicely if I hadn't have the ace of spades in my hand, that being the 2 of spades. After the 2 of spades, we should then have the 3, then the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Jack, Queen, and King. In fact, every one of the spades in numerical order. And bear in mind, just a moment ago, thank you very much, I did spread the cards out and ask you to make sure that there was no order within the cards, and yet now within those last few shuffles, I think you will see that now every single one of the cards in this pack runs in perfect numerical order. That's all of the hearts, all of the clubs, and all of the diamonds, every one from the 2 through to the king.
Very good.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
As far as gambling routines go, you can't beat that. That's got it all. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no deck switches, guys. That was
No.
legit. That was as legit as it gets.
And
He
here-
was really doing bottom deals.
Adam, to your point of what you said earlier, this is the creativity of Guy Hollingworth. This is him in the beginning of him being in Magic, being at school, joining the Magic Club, being infatuated with gambling routines, and creating gambling routines. This was the first one that he created that he was proud of, right? But this is his early mind in Magic created that routine.
That is a 22-year-old Guy Hollingworth.
So you're saying that's the one he kept?
That's the one he kept of the gambling routines that he worked out in the beginning of doing Magic. And he said that was the first one he was proud of. But it's all there. Everything is built into that routine. Everything that he's doing is undoing what's happening before it, so that at the end, he's left with a deck that's in order. It's really an amazing construction. I think it's a testament to the creativity of Guy right there.
I could watch that over and over. Like, even though if I knew every single method of every single move, I could still watch it in the same way that you can watch a beautiful a flautist play their instrument in such a brilliant way, you know, or a guitarist, a phenomenon of a guitar player. I mean, it's really something to watch him do that gambling routine. I love
When
it.
you know what all the moves are and you watch it again, it's staggering. it's really something. He's really dealing from the center of the deck. You know, he's got a technique for dealing from the center of the deck, and it's practical, and all of this is practical and doable. None of this other than the false shuffle, that full deck false shuffle, that's probably the hardest thing that he's doing in that whole sequence, right?
Well,
Yeah.
he's dealing a few bottoms, right? Calling them centers, stuff like that, right?
No, those centers are really centers. The bottoms, he is legitimately dealing bottoms, but it's only like the first 2 that he does deceptively, and then the rest he's sort of exposing that he's pulling it from the bottom.
And he's got it constructed so it's exposing the half the deck, which makes
It's at half the deck, so it makes that bottom deal a little bit easier. That's correct.
Yeah. So
Yeah, so right, centers means center of the deck, just so you guys know. When we say dealing centers, that means from the center of the deck. Bottoms means from the bottom of the deck.
and he explained quite honestly what the rationale is for a center deal. He didn't get into the idea that, you know, all that stuff, it changes when you're doing an exhibition and a show. And what he didn't get into very much, and this is fine because, you know, it's not necessary, you know, it's a show about what it is. It's not like what it actually is, right? So when he's talking about it, he doesn't discuss the idea that the center deal is just ridiculously difficult. And if you're ever actually attempting to do what he's talking about, as in steal money from people by secretly dealing cards from where you're not supposed to be dealing from them, and you're not playing in a casino, so it's like 50 years ago and people have guns, you know, for their own security, you know, you're not gonna deal cards from the center of the deck. You know, you're gonna have a buddy, he's gonna spill a drink, you're gonna do something much more secure, much less about your finger, you know. But he was really talking about where it comes from and what it's for, you know, the idea behind it. James here is saying something interesting that I think I would love to know your thoughts on it as a panel. He says, I'm having trouble following things even if I know some of what's going on. And it's a really interesting question, because when you're watching a routine like this, where there's a lot of different effects, a lot of the effects are demonstrations of skill, right? It blurs the line. And as a magician, at least, it's pretty hard to tell sometimes whether you're watching the trick or watching what you believe he's really doing. Because, you know, you get into magic, and if you're watching this, you're definitely probably into magic, and you're watching it and you're thinking, All right, is he doing, what's he doing? Is he doing what he says he's doing? I think he's doing this. It takes about that long or shorter for you to totally forget the story he's telling and whatever the heck I'm supposed to think he's saying he's doing. So you're not even watching the trick. And so when this is like a demonstration like this, he's telling you what he's doing. You know he's lying, because that's the whole fun of it. And so you're like 3 steps away from what the story would be. Do you guys have a problem with that? I do. Like, you know, I mean, I'm watching a movie in my mind about what I think might be happening. It's very hard to stick with the effect. Do you guys ever have that issue?
Yeah, but to me that just says that I'm not paying attention to the trick. I'm trying to figure things out. I'm not honoring this man and his story that he's telling, because I'm going off of my own tangents trying to figure things out. So I stop myself when I do that, because I want to see what people are trying to do. You know, I know enough methods that sure, my brain wants to go to that place to try to figure out what's going on. Am I with him? Do I know everything that's happening behind the scenes step by step? But at a certain point, you know, I would hope that as a magician, if someone's coming to watch me do magic, that they at some point surrender and go on the ride I'm trying to provide. So I try to do the same thing when I see other performers, because, you know, otherwise it just turns into a judgment game, you know, rather than actually enjoying anything, you know.
But I would say that took you some practice, and
certainly.
I think when I say some practice, I'm not even sure we began realizing that was the goal for a few years at least.
Certainly.
You know what I mean? So it's fun if you can start trying to watch the show early. Don't be surprised if your brain is pretty persistent in its pull to look behind the curtain. You know, it's hard because you got to learn how to watch things with 2 minds and not let them infect each other. There's that word again.
Tree fungus.
Don't cross the streams.
Don't cross the streams. I definitely want to be full first. Yes,
I can't help it though. I wish, like Alex is saying, like being able to turn off that analytical mind. Like I wish I could turn it off, but I can't. Like I just can't. For some reason.
Y'all should try watching movies with Adam Grace, because Adam is the spoiler killer, right? So he doesn't want to spoil it for anyone, but his magic mind in a movie is he can't. He just watches it like in 1s and 0s over there.
Oh, wait a second. Was that a milk build shuffle?
You go to pee and you get a look at Adam, and he's over there going, and he's just, you know, he's like Christopher Nolan over there. He's like, all
right, dude, I've done the math. This is what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's terrible to watch movies with me, because I'll say things like, you know, that was a practical effect, and I don't know why they didn't do that originally.
This happened last time. He's like, ooh, practical effect. And I'm like, I'm sorry. My jargon is past. It's been years. What in the heck are you talking about? He's like, you know, they really did that. They hit his leg under the table, you know, and they pretended it was sliced off. That was like Lieutenant Dan, you know, that wasn't like a Hobbit computer fake knee. He's, you know, his leg's inside the wheelchair. You know,
I
know. Where were we? He was holding a break. He was getting ready to do something, right? Let's turn it back on.
It's really bad. I wish I could turn it off, but I cannot turn it off. Alex, I wish I could.
Isn't it wild? It just occurred to me watching that movie with you. I saw this movie with you, The X-Men. Elliot Page is an X-Man. How crazy is that? It's back.
Hey now. Hey now.
Right?
You're right. You're right.
Look at you.
But not.
Well, right.
But not.
Yeah. Yeah.
From X-Man to man. Sorry.
So this last video is
not a riddle.
This last video is a killer. I love this. I think this might be my favorite presentation for this trick that I've seen. I don't want to say anything else. Just go on the ride. It is so good, and it's quick. This one's a quicker one.
All right, here we go.
All right.
Using 4 cards, specifically the 4 aces, as you will have guessed by now. And I'm going to pop the aces down onto the table, and I'm going to keep them as widely separated as possible, as you can see like that.
That's a morning pose.
And in addition to those cards, we need 3 other cards for each one of the aces. Now, you don't have to remember what these cards are. You simply have to be aware of the fact that there are indeed 3 cards on each one of the aces. So there's another 3 over here for the ace of hearts, and finally the last 3 for the ace of clubs. Now, one of the aces is traditionally referred to as the leader ace, tends to be the ace of spades, and who am I to fly in the face of tradition? The ace of spades, as well as its 3 cards, is going to go up into the top pocket, where you can keep an eye on it at all times. And with any luck, the other cards will one at a time disappear, starting with the ace of clubs. So if you watch the ace of clubs very carefully, it goes in between the other cards in its packet. That means there are some cards above, some cards below, keeping the ace trapped in the middle, and yet nonetheless, the ace completely disappears. Now, when I say it disappears, you'll notice there are still 4 cards, but none of those cards is an ace. So you could say that the ace has changed, or perhaps more specifically, changed places with another card. I shall do that again with the ace of hearts. If you'd like to keep an eye on the ace of hearts this time, again, in between the other cards in the packet. Very slowly, the ace of hearts goes in between the others, and yet just as before, with a snap of the fingers, the ace of hearts also disappears. Leaving just one more. This would be your last chance to catch me out on the ace of diamonds. So let me leave the ace of diamonds just protruding somewhat, so you can see it up until the very last moment. There it is, the ace of hearts, just protruding somewhat. If I push it down very slowly, so you really can see it up until that last second, and yet that one, like the others, really does disappear. Thank you. Now the question, of course, is, if the aces are not where they started, and if you don't mind my saying so, it would appear that they are not, then presumably they must be somewhere else. The question is, where do you suppose they just might be? I almost forgot. Let's have a look. That's number 1, that's number 2, that's 3, and that's all 4 of the aces.
Hang on.
Sorry.
We're almost there.
Just want to let
Sorry.
everyone know we're not switching the tape. The cards were in the exact same position that they were in before the cut.
Well, I tell you what, since you like that so much, why don't I do it again? I will anyway. I'm going to actually make it go backwards this time. Like this, they do go backwards. When I say backwards, what I mean is that this card is no longer an ace. Funnily enough, nor is the second one, nor even is the third one. The only one that's still an ace is the ace of spades, which is the one that started here, because over here where it started, that would be the ace of clubs. Over here where it started, the ace of hearts, and finally, that would be the ace of diamonds. Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm with Alex. That's the best one of those. That trick hardly ever comes off that way, right?
Never. It always falls flat. That has an ending. That's an ending to that trick.
Well, I mean, there's this plot where they come over and then they're back, right? And that's in eighth assemblies. In order to do that, they never really vanish that well because they're still there, right? So I think Alex meant ace assemblies, period.
Yes.
It sounds like.
Ace assemblies, period. I've seen very few that play big and are startling and hurt people. But that one, you know, it's got all the elements. I mean, when those cards vanish, he's got 4 cards cleanly.
How is that? That's like, I know how the trick is done, but how is he doing? I mean, this was.
Let's wait till the after show. We can
Adam
put a little bit of light on that.
That we don't do that part. We don't do that part during this part. Did I say it right?
Good enough.
We don't do that part during this part, right?
There's another part to do that.
The part where we're like, you didn't see the string?
Yeah, there's a part where we talk about those parts.
We don't do this, that part. Its pronouns are that, it's. It, that, right? Where does the string go?
Yeah.
We've already said too much.
Yeah, the part is after this part when this part comes.
The mirror comes up later.
Let's go do the other part.
Let's do the other part.
I'm with you, Marianne. I just like to say it's time to catch him out.
Mm-hmm.
Catch him out.
I said catch him out. That was a little Canadian.
The oot.